Have you ever used GarageBand, Apple's introductory digital audio workstation, or DAW? More importantly, did you ever use it, or something like it, at music class when you were in school? Probably not, and the reasons why suggest a gap in the music education system. Later on today's Music Affairs podcast, we'll be talking to Ken Lampl, Professor at the ANU School of Music on that issue, but first we'll cover the basics. I'm a music student and I was never taught how to use a DAW until university. Before that, I messed around with GarageBand on my parents' computer, but I never even thought of it as a compositional tool. This experience is common around the world. In a 2011 paper on amateur musicians, Regalski suggests that there is a bias in music education at the kindergarten to grade 12 level on focusing on particular genres of music such as classical. I say with this bias comes a focus on particular aspects of music, like notation, rather than a forward thinking on digital techniques. In fact, in a 2005 paper on fluency in the arts in GarageBand, Gazouasis suggests that traditional notions of music literacy for the masses are becoming irrelevant with the advent of technology, and that notation will eventually become a more exclusive technique for the university level. This was back in 2005, but interestingly, we haven't gotten to that stage yet. Schools still teach notation instead of using the fun interface of GarageBand. Should a music education be more focused on the use of DAWs? All the evidence is suggesting that fluency in a DAW is necessary for future composers, largely thanks to virtual instruments. Virtual instruments are digital versions of real-life instruments, allowing someone to simulate an entire orchestra from a keyboard and DAW in their house. In a 2016 paper on virtual instruments feigning humanity, Klein states that virtual orchestras are representing orchestral music in certain locations and forms, which requires composers to develop new musical skills so that they are able to use these technologies. The specific numbers, according to a study for a 2016 PhD thesis by Morgan, are that 84% of screen composers use some form of virtual instruments, with 29% of those using exclusively virtual instruments. It looks like most screen composers today are using virtual instruments, so surely this suggests that it is necessary to teach these techniques from a young age to ensure the next generation of composers are fluent in the programs they will require. Perhaps the issue is rooted at the very heart of music education and academia. In a 2011 article on the future of music making and education, Gazouasis and Bacon state that we may need to reconsider the ways that musicians are prepared and educated in academia, as it seems that our own music orientations may be the very thing stifling the profession from adapting digital media into our own learning and teaching practices. To find out more, we are joined now by Professor Ken Lampl. Ken is a professor at the ANU School of Music, where he helped establish their composition for film and video games major, which of course heavily teaches DAWs. Ken, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
So I just wanted to ask you, obviously you teach music tech here at ANU. Do you think we're failing students by not teaching DAWs and virtual instruments from a younger age in schools?
Yeah, I think they should get that younger. Absolutely.
And do you think it has to be pro versions like Logic, or is something like GarageBand okay to teach them the basics?
Because I've also taught technology to kids a lot. And so what I find is GarageBand is good when they're little, but once they hit 12 and 13, then you can move them up to the professional.
Yeah, that's really cool. And do you find that teaching them from a younger age helps them a lot to get that fluency?
Yes, definitely. It makes a huge, huge difference to start them young. Because when you start them young, they treat the DAW like an instrument and not like a computer program.
Yeah, that's super important, isn't it? That they just get that fluency. Yeah.
There's a naturalness when they start young by which they interact with it. They relate to it like an instrument, where when you start later, you relate to it more like a computer program that does stuff.
Do you see any negatives from teaching it young? Do you think it can stifle creativity with the widespread availability of loops and things like that?
No, not at all. I think it only enhances. The big danger in teaching any arts is the concept of creativity is a huge danger, because no, it doesn't mean anything. We got to be really careful, because the word creativity is thrown around and it has no real tangible meaning. Creativity is a byproduct of being good and facile with something. You can't teach it. What you teach is the facility with things like facility with a computer program, facility on an instrument, understanding how chords move. Then creativity will come slowly by itself. When you're actual teaching things, you can't teach it.
Yeah, there's no difference between being creative on a DAW and then being creative on, say, any sort of written thing or improvising or anything like that.
And it depends on your facility with the thing. It doesn't exist outside your facility and technical ability on the thing. So all there is to teach always is only technique and how to use things. People have a creative ability to larger and lesser extents, which will express itself when they get facile with the thing, like loving and people getting along. It's a natural thing.
That makes total sense, and I think really relevant to the point. I think that's all I have time for, and I just wanted to thank you again for joining me and talking to me.
Okay, you got it. Take care, Joshua.
Bye. There we have it. It seems inevitable that we should be teaching DAWs to school children, but to what extent and how we go about doing that remains uncertain. If you have any ideas, leave a comment below and remember to like and share. See you next time.